Pranam Sadhguru, respected Swamiji, ladies and gentlemen, I must admit I'm feeling a bit foolish over here, standing here. What am I doing at a conference like this? And given my background in business, it might seem incongruous for me to be speaking at a conference on the theme of peace and reconciliation. So I hope at the end of my talk you would still maybe be around to the view that industry has a pivotal role in to some extent in contributing to peace and reconciliation. And the organizers felt I should talk about sustainability and how that's related to peace. So I made a valiant effort, and I hope that will be of some use to all of you. Now, my own background has got nothing to do with public service, spirituality, social welfare, activism, or anything of the kind. So it's all been in the world of business and commerce. So you might say that this is just the wrong kind of person to be speaking at this conference. And so I look at all the people around me, and some of you are so distinguished, and in that sense I'd be a nobody. So the point is that I have worked solely in the area of business and commerce, and I still consult in the area of business and marketing strategy for a variety of organizations, which are all devoted to making money. And my consulting is all about helping them create greater economic wealth. So still, is there a perspective that we can offer on sustainability or on peace, on reconciliation? Let's explore that, and let's see whether we have something to say. So just to give the whole context of everything, and I have very little to say, but let me just give you the context. I spent a fair amount of my career, say at least half of my nearly 40 years of career, in an industry which is regarded as a red category industry. So I shall try to talk about that, because this is the thin edge of the wedge. We're talking about the battery industry. No, it's a very, very useful product. I mean, right now this is backed up by batteries. The vehicles in which we came were started, their internal combustion engines were started using batteries. Batteries are used in traction, they're used in defense and space applications. They're terribly useful things. Terribly, terribly useful. I mean, we can't exist without them. Our phones have batteries, our laptops have batteries, and we got terribly used to them. Storage power is now an inevitable part of our life. We can't roll back progress and go back to the way that we were. We can't deny ourselves the comforts that we have got used to. And no doubt these comforts also enable us to become more productive and also become perhaps better human beings. I mean, if we were back in the age of being, in the stone ages of fighting for survival, I don't think we'd have time to talk about peace, reconciliation, and sustainability. Life would be brutal, short, and nasty. And as mankind, we progress to a higher level of evolution, a higher level of consciousness, and that's also because many of the creature comforts that today we are used to have now become available to us. So we have physical comfort, we have food on our table, we can control the climate just around us, even if not the larger climate, and that makes us do things and gives us the time to reflect, to think, educate ourselves, and become maybe better human beings. So, I must also tell you that I run the Indian Battery Manufacturers Association. All the battery manufacturers know me, and they said, why don't you run this for us? And I can tell you that the number one agenda of that association is compliance. Compliance, environmental compliance. It may seem like a strange thing. An industry body's number one agenda is environmental compliance. And I'm not saying it, you can just go to their website and see it at ibma.org.in. That is the number one thing. The other interesting thing is that in that industry, close to 10 to 15% of the time of the chief executive is spent on environmental health and safety. When I took over as CEO, I found that it was an annoyingly large amount of time that I was spending on this. There were days like, when you were spending almost the whole day just reviewing EHS. But that is a fact of that industry. That industry has got, it uses lead in the batteries. Lead is an extremely toxic element if not used properly. And so you have everywhere an EHS officer, you have an EHS department, and a fair amount of time and energy is spent not on how you're making money, but how you're mitigating environmental health and let's say dangerous impacts of your industry. That's how important it is. I was also very pleasantly surprised when my good friend and the MD and CEO of Exide Industries, which is India's largest battery company, Shubhir Chakravarti, during his acceptance speech when he was bestowed the Distinguished Alumnus Award at IIM Calcutta just I think 2 weeks ago, in that acceptance speech he devoted his entire address to sustainability. That's only an indication of, he could have talked about so many other things. He's been bestowed the Distinguished Alumnus Award. He could have talked about how he's built a successful industry. No, he talked about sustainability. And this is just not a stray case. This is the number one thing on people's minds. So that would seem very strange to you, and I shall explain to you the logic. So what I shall do over here is to try and break up this whole thing into answering 3 important questions. Just bear with me while I read out those 3 questions. The first question is, why at all would industry bother about sustainability? Dr. Nami talked about, they are more interested in money than trees. So it seems silly. Why should you be wasting your time talking about the environment? You should be talking about how you can make more money, sustainability. Forget sustainability. It's all about shareholder value maximization, profits, EBITDA, and stuff like that. So that's the first question that's answered. Is there actually a driver for industry to concentrate on sustainability? The second thing, it's all very nice to say. Can industry really do anything about it? It's all about extraction of resources, mined resources or natural resources, and converting them into goods and services that you can sell for a profit. That's what industry is all about. So then, can they really do anything about it? That's the second question that I want to answer. And the third is, how is all that related to peace and justice, or is it at all related to it? So let us explore these 3 things. So the first part, let's talk to you about industry's drivers for sustainability. Does industry really have anything that's pushing it in that direction? The first point I shall give you a commercial compulsion, business compulsion. Now, we were all used to, when we secure business from automotive majors, what we call original equipment manufacturers, we're very used to the fact that they'd come into a very, very thorough and critical quality audit. We are prepared for it. They'd come in and strip you. They'd look at every process and see if anything could go wrong, and we were well prepared for it. I think one of the first experience I had was when we bid for Volvo Sweden, and we bid for their Indian business. And the first thing that happened is that a team came down to do an environmental and social audit. And we were like, we were completely blindsided. They came in to see that were we managing the environment well, what were we doing for the local community. They in fact asked the question, what are you doing for the rural women in Maremalanagar? And we have to scramble our brains and think of something. And if you don't score a certain minimum, you don't score 70% on that on their sheet, that's the end of it. You don't proceed to the next step. It's not that you are competitive, that you make a great product, all that is secondary. First, do you qualify an environmental and social audit? You don't qualify an environmental and social audit, you don't even get to the next stage. The next team doesn't visit you. You just red marked and that's it. I don't think you will get that business for life. Luckily we passed that audit, that's a great thing. Because by the time we had got some consciousness. But it was a dramatic indicator to us of the fact that large organizations especially are very careful about who they source from, who they do business with. So this is not a question of only Volvo, it's about responsible sourcing of even coffee beans, responsible sourcing of diamonds, and you have them marked saying, these are responsibly sourced and stuff like that. So the first thing is that there is an absolute business compulsion. You want to be in business, you better stay sustainable. So that's the first reason, so I don't have to tell you that. The second thing is that almost in every industry, you always look at how you can actually minimize your costs of operation. So extraction of groundwater, can I minimize it? And frankly, it might seem like a small thing, but it actually has an effect on the bottom line. So there is an economic rationale. So if you want to make money, you have to bother about the trees. You can't not bother about the trees. That's the second thing. So apart from a business compulsion, there is also the economic rationale. The third thing is, I think India has possibly seen the world's worst industrial disaster ever in Bhopal, when the methyl isocyanate leaked out of the urine carbide plant. We had over 10,000 people dying. It's such a raw thing. My train was the last train that went through Bhopal that night. Of course, I didn't know that MIC had leaked or that anything was happening. And my parents used to live in some godforsaken place called Ghazipur up in Uttar Pradesh, and that paper reached us 4 days later. That's when I realized that mine was the last train that actually went through there, the Ganga Kaveri. And since then, I think our environmental laws have undergone a massive overhaul. I mean, I've not gone through the history of our laws, of our environmental laws, but today, at least on paper, they are fairly tight. You have the Soil Act, the Water Act, the Air Act, all kinds of things. You have a whole host of bodies that actually pressurize you. You have the local communities that go up in arms. There was the Sterlite agitation. I don't want to talk about this or that. I mean, there are so many agitations everywhere. Anytime you try to do something, there is some group that actually comes up and says that, you shouldn't be doing it. And it can be a bit frustrating too, where it is the Adivasis in Niyamagiri, whether it is the people in the Konkan area protesting against a power plant or a copper plant or something like that. It's become extremely difficult. It's become extremely difficult to acquire land and to actually set up industry. It is challenging. Definitely it's challenging, and there is a reason for it. So I don't think you can get away from the fact that you have regulatory burden. You have actual need for compulsion for regulatory compliance. So aside from the fact that if you want business, you've got to be environmentally compliant, you've got to be sustainable. There is an economic rationale for it. The third thing is that there is an absolute regulatory burden on you. There is an absolute pressure over there. So I don't think you have a situation where industry can say that they are not worried about sustainability. Those days are past us. Maybe it was there back then, I don't know, 1980s, 1970s, and I do agree. I have seen industry from 1980s. I don't think we were so concerned about things at that point in time. We didn't know that there were harmful effects of what we used to do. Now, that's the first part. The second part is that, is there really anything that industry can do about sustainability? I know you hear a lot of buzzwords. So let me break this up for you into three things that industry can and does, absolutely does. The first is refuse. The second is reduce and reuse. And the third is recycle. When it comes to refuse, let me tell you, let me give an example of something that you'd be very familiar with. Expanded polystyrene, or what we call thermocol. Now, thermocol is a fantastic material. It is light. It can be shaped into almost anything, and it absorbs a lot of shock, which has made it the secondary packaging material of choice for white goods, electronic equipment, and also for batteries. We used to use a lot of it in batteries. It's only later that we started realizing that anything that requires protection, definitely first thing you opt for is thermocol. It's cheap, it's available, you can easily mold it into almost any shape, and sort of protect your this thing. When it goes out, and when it's a one-use material, you have no use for it thereafter. Once it's thrown out, that thing just remains in the ground. There's absolutely nothing you can do with it. It doesn't degrade. You see landfills and it's a sorry sight. You see pieces of thermocol lying all over, splattered. There's nothing you can do with it. It's when that realization started hitting us that, the one thing that you must realize that even people in industry are also consumers. They're also members of civil society. They want their children to have nice, clean playgrounds. They want nice parks. They want clean cities. They want good air. So it's not that they don't want it. They just can't, what do you do with money? You can't do anything with money if you have completely polluted air, if you don't have safe drinking water. The money is of no use. So what happens is that to industry, what happened is that they started now taking a movement against expanded polystyrene. So anti-thermocol. So they started rejecting thermocol and started doing things like, craft paper, Innovation. People thought, what is it that we can do that could actually become degradable? And so that is one example where the industry actually moved away from something that was highly polluting by completely rejecting that material and getting out of that. I think that's a remarkable example. Today you don't find it. You don't find it as much. Still the other day somebody delivered some stainless steel kitchen bowls to me, and I was sorry to see, they were packed with thermocol. So I'm not saying that everybody has got rid of it. I know the battery industry has got rid of it. It's a major advancement. They were a huge consumer. Every single battery had thermocol around it. The second thing that we did is, we've gone about in a very major way to actually look at every metric of everything that we're using and trying to reduce it and see if we can reuse it. For example, let's look at groundwater. Now we tap groundwater, we use it, whatever. If you actually process it safely, and now today you can't get away from the fact that you need your sewage treatment plants, you need your effluent treatment plants. You don't have it, and even the readings on your sewage treatment plant and effluent treatment plant, the meters are directly connected to the pollution control board. They also, in some states, they mandate you to have a digital board at the gate of your factory reporting your lead in air, reporting the way your STP or ETP is working, right at the front gate. I think that's an extraordinary thing to be asking industry to do. I don't know what purpose it serves. But you can't tamper with it because it is directly connected to the servers of the pollution control board. So today I think that there is a lot of awareness of the fact that you can reduce and you can reuse a lot of stuff that you do. So there are almost every plant today that comes up is a zero discharge plant. Nothing is let out into the open. Everything is consumed within the plant. So that's a great thing. And they take a lot of pride. Everyone takes a lot of pride in seeing a green factory, a green cover, lovely lawns, more than your machines. That's the first sight that greets you, and everyone loves to see it. They love to show it off. They love to show it off to their, to the visitors. And let's say that if somebody were coming to see your plant and they see all this, they are likely to be heavily influenced and likely to give you the business because they like it so much over there. And we used to have this thing when I was working for Amara Raja, we used to proudly boast that, this curd that you're having for lunch, it comes to milk that the cows over here are bred on, and they eat the grass that is watered from the wastewater that comes out of our plant. And so, if there is something wrong, all of us would die. And it's a very impressive thing to say, And let me talk about the third thing, that is recycling. Now this has become a huge agenda. You heard about, I think, lithium ion coming in. No one really knows how to recycle lithium ion. It's a very difficult task. Now the important thing is lead acid batteries. Lead acid batteries are the most recycled product on the planet. 98% of it actually goes back. You don't have much primary metal production, but you have a huge amount of secondary metal production, all coming from recycling. There is a huge economic incentive to recycle lead acid battery. We are struggling with lithium ion. Now, what do you do with so much amount of lithium that you would hardly get any value for it? And if you use lithium ferrous phosphate, who's interested in the iron? It's of no value. So there is absolutely a huge viability funding gap when it comes to lithium ion recycling. But in lead, the economic incentive is fantastic. Now this is a problem. Why is it a problem? It incentivizes recycling. It's a very easy metal. The metallurgy of it, I'm not getting into it, but it's a very easy metal to smelt. Very easy to extract lead. Anybody can do it using what they call a mandir bhatti, an open furnace. It doesn't require a high temperature. It doesn't require 1200, 1400 degrees centigrade that iron or copper requires. So it's a lovely metal. The funny thing about it is, it will always be present in the environment because every radioactive metal actually, when it decomposes, degenerates, it gives away its neutrons, protons, etc., it comes down to lead. Come down to atomic number 82. That's the largest, heaviest stable element, but it's toxic within our bodies. So you have everyone that can lay their hands on a battery, taking it away and trying to extract the lead from it in very unsafe manner. So you have a lot of people affected badly by lead poisoning, because there's a huge amount of activity taking place in the informal sector And right now there's a huge dialogue to take it, move it to the formal sector, to make it more sustainable, to make it go back into the industry in a controlled manner without impacting the lives of society, people who are working there and everybody else. So that's the third part of it, the recycling. So I hope I have managed to let you know that industry can do something and actually does something for sustainability. So we come to the third question, which is obviously not easy to answer. How is all this connected to peace and justice and all of that? And I know, when you talk about industry, you always think about a lot of people, activists, NGOs, green warriors, would think about some nasty people sitting in a room around a boardroom table, thinking of how to make more and more money and become more and more rich and stuff like that. I think what sometimes people miss the point is, you cannot become rich by making everybody else poor. You need somebody to sell to. You need them also to become very wealthy. And ultimately, you cannot do it on a sustained basis, because if you just keep on extracting everything, there will be nothing left. So that is something that I think people are educated now. They go to schools, they go to colleges, they learn all those things. Yes, the incentives are in place for you to make money. Incentives are not adequately there in place for you to do the right thing by the environment, do the right thing by society. So it is more profitable to cut down trees, which happens in the Amazon, and a lot of stuff that happens that's not good. But I think in this country we have a reasonable balance. We do have voices. I mean, okay, it's a messy democracy. Anything you want to do, there will be 10 people opposing it. And that is good, bad, I don't know. I'm not an expert in politics. I'm not an expert in any of that. But I think a certain amount of balance is good in the long run. Maybe I won't live to see my theory proven or disproven or whatever. But my current conviction is that it is better to have a society where there is a certain amount of disagreement. Doesn't matter that there are some people who vote for X and some people vote for Y. Doesn't matter. You get different points of view. And I think that's very important, because everybody has a point of view. I mean, Mr. Tirumurthy mentioned it to me at lunch, there is always another point of view. And that's a nice way of putting it. No matter what you might say, you might hold very strongly to a point of view, somebody else has got another one. And maybe there is something there. Walk a mile in their shoes and maybe you will think differently. So the first thing is that I'd like to consider, while industry provides well-paying jobs, provides good careers, it creates innovation, it helps people do great things, wonderful things. People in industry have created chips, they have created computers, they have created the steam engine, all kinds of things. They've done wonderful things. So I don't think we can say that it's a bad thing. Industry is a bad thing. The important thing is that in working in a society, the question that every CEO asks, apart from the fact that why should my employees come to work for me every day? Why should my customer buy my product? Why should my investor invest their money in my business and not in some other business? Is also the fact that why would society let me put my factory here and work here? They could say, not in my backyard, go and put it somewhere else. So that question is there. If you answer these 4 questions, you're fine. So in trying to do that, you actually also invest in good for your society. It sounds like, you're playing some lip service, going and giving some notebooks to somebody. But I can tell you that actually investing in the local community has its rewards. So invest in healthcare, education. You might say that's the job of the government. Now all of us would agree that while there is the government also has got limited capacity. So everyone could do with a little bit of help. So you have NGOs, you have charitable bodies, and you have industry. So forget the corporate social responsibility part of it. I'm saying just from the fact that you want a nice environment around the place where you're working, and you can't solve the problem all over, but at least in your local area, you can actually create some amount of goodness. So the environmental impact on society, and I can give you examples where, because industry has come in, and they have actually planned the place better, denuding of the grassland, where goats used to go and virtually crop no tree used to even grow about 2 feet because the goats would eat it up. And now, because they managed it better, there are forests, there's lovely vegetation and stuff like that after the industry has come. So There's a positive environmental impact of this thing, which contributes to a greater sense of well-being, and I think a certain amount of social peace and justice around that place, and I have seen that personally. The second, and they also create, sometimes they create, in creating water resources, they create a watershed that increases the groundwater table all around for everybody. So there's a lot of good that actually happens. The second thing is, I must tell you the story about, one of my clients is Godrej. And you go to Godrej and Boise, you go to the plant, and the first thing you learn is they have something like, they own some 3,500 acres, I think, in Bombay, prime property, which is all mangroves. The Godrej group has taken a decision not to build anything there. Leave it as it is, as a gift to the city forever. It is theirs. The patta is in their name. They could do anything they like with it. Can you imagine the economic incentive for them? This is a group that has decided that they will not touch it. 3,500 acres of prime land as mangroves left as it is. Everybody that you go to, and the point I'm making here is, when you go into Godrej and you start talking to the managers, one of the first narratives would be about this. They say it with so much pride. Imagine if you work there 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Those values get imbued in you. That boss is going to ask you what is the impact on the environment of almost anything. It's an actual fact. You can see the pride in them, Now, those people who work there, they can't come out with any other values. They can't come out without values of, sustainability, peace, justice, doing the right thing. Almost everything that they do then becomes, gets translated into that. They would not get rid of workers just like that, just because it's profitable to let, say, 100 people go. They'll say, we'll tolerate it. These guys stood with us when we were growing. Now, we don't need them, but we'll keep them till their time is up. So every single action of theirs actually is guided by that. By that one mantra, that we'll do what we think is absolutely right in the long term. So that's an impact on the employees there. And the third thing is, everybody deals with them, like I deal with them, or a vendor that deals with them, or a channel partner, sort of unconsciously starts imbibing that philosophy. So you see it's kind of a positive spiral. They're good, they do some good, the people within that get to know it, larger society gets to know it, everybody that's connected with them actually gets to know it. And then that helps. You can go on. There are very good groups in this country. I don't think you can say that all industries are bad. I think you could ascribe some amount of measure of this thing to goodness to the Tata group, to the Godrej group, and so many others. And even in Chennai, groups have done some fantastic work. So I think we have to respect that. So I think that there is an impact on employees, there's an impact on society, there's an impact on the larger ecosystem of players. So in conclusion, I would say that while industry is a driver of economic growth, no doubt about it, it is also a significant influence on environment and with ripple effect on society, on social justice and on peace. Because, somebody asked me, like I used to be very much against, the servant maid bringing her daughter in to work, to help her work. I said, no, I don't want her to do work. If she wants to do anything, I'll do it. Take me as your assistant, but I'm not having her do it. So somebody asked me, hey Ram, are you solving the problem of child labor doing that? I said, no, I'm not adding to it. Okay, I can't solve it. I stop adding to it. So the least industry can do is to stop adding to it. There is some good that they do. We can't live without industry. So at least we give them that width, that maybe they can't solve the environmental problem, maybe they cannot cause social justice and peace. That is left to all you wonderful people here, but they at least will not add to it. So thank you so much. Thank you for listening to me.
My question is more practical. How do we dispose the used batteries in the households? Is there a structure? Because generally we are told that we are not supposed to dispose them with the dry waste either. So is there, I don't see any separate policy or any, awareness is very poor. Actually, I've got a big box of all the used batteries in my house, because I don't want to throw them away just like that. So trying to do my bit in protecting the environment. But is there anything that we can do? How do we dispose the used batteries in our homes?
Yeah, this is a very, this is a question that I think it's more to do with lack of awareness. Batteries are classified as e-waste. Anything that is connected to a wire is called an e-waste. And so all e-waste must be disposed responsibly back to an authorized e-waste recycler. And there are registered ones on the sites and stuff like that. So for example, where I live, all our e-waste, that includes batteries and anything that would contain a battery. Say for example, if you had a mobile phone, you had this thing and you want to throw it away, you go and put it in a particular bin. There is one bin for the entire complex. So all of us put it over there, and that's taken away by an e-waste recycler. So these are not batteries which are meant for your vehicles and stuff like that, because usually when it comes to vehicles for batteries for your vehicles or your inverter, when at the time that you replace it, the dealer picks it up. You don't have the botheration of having to, the dealer is supposed to then return it back to the company. So, but the question is more of consumer cells. Consumer cells, you're supposed to put it in an e-waste bin and call up the e-waste recycler and take it away.
Vehicles with batteries are going to be slowly replaced with electric vehicles, but even they do have batteries. So how is the manufacturing industry looking at those kind of, because this is lithium and this is also going to be something similar to it. Has there been any idea of how we're going to manage that?
Yeah, so the government has promulgated the battery waste management rules in August of 2022. Realizing this, of course, the electric vehicle batteries would not come up for replacement for another 4 or 5 years. But ahead of that, they've already promulgated the rules which put the onus for all batteries, including that for what's used in this, for example, including consumer cells, including car batteries which are today used in the the IC engine batteries and the electric vehicles, plus every single device that uses batteries. It covers all of that. They have put the onus on the producer. The producer is defined as the person who puts the battery in the market in their name. So if you are a manufacturer and I bought it from you and I put my name Ram on it and sell it to somebody else, it would be my responsibility to make sure that battery comes back. What I do for it, they don't bother. It's up to you to pick it up, return it to the recycler, and the recycler will issue for every ton of or every kilogram of end metal, recycled metal that they generate what's called an end producer responsibility certificate. As a manufacturer, you have got to buy that online, upload it on the CPCB portal and say, hey, I fulfilled my obligation. So the law in theory is very, very, they've already thought of it.
That's where I come. It's now becoming paperwork. So to complete paperwork, obviously there's going to be a lot of lacuna which I can overcome by under the table dealings. So how environment is so sensitive right now for us. So how are we going to avoid these kind of, especially with such kind of sensitive material, how are we going to deal with it?
I am reasonably hopeful, like when you talk about under the table stuff like that, in my own dealings I see this, this petty corruption and stuff like that has come down gradually. I mean, you don't have to really pay money for railway tickets, you don't have to pay money for air tickets, you don't have to pay money for death certificates. My father passed away 2 months ago, sad, but anyway, the legal hire certificate was available to me with 60 rupees paid by GPay. End of story. No standing in line, nothing. Even when it comes to this, everything is now with a GST invoice. They made it extremely complex. Like when you buy old batteries, they want to know where did you buy the batteries from, which was the invoice, does it have a GST number, does it have an HSN code, and nothing is accepted if it is not electronic. So it becomes extremely difficult for somebody outside the system to game the system. You can't pay money and get out. You can stay completely outside the system. Like, you can be a completely notorious criminal, not pay GST for your inputs, not pay GST for your outputs and do everything. I think, slowly this country is getting around to more of rule of law. I'm hopeful about it. I mean, I may not live to see all of it changing, but I see this country is moving more in the direction of, it's becoming more compliant. I mean, you can see, I mean, I know you may say it's a very small thing, but I don't know exactly the numbers, but something like the income tax returns filed have gone from some 30 million, 60 million, some such number, you know. So it's virtually doubled or 2.5 times. So I see a compliance. I see it. I'm seeing it. I mean, and no battery industry, no battery industry. As you become larger and larger, it becomes very difficult to be non-compliant. Very difficult.
My question is, actually, it flows from what you spoke all this while, and also a little of what you said. As you said, as you get larger and larger, compliances are very good, which is what I'm a lawyer. So I see this day in and day out, and large corporates, I know how sticky they are about their compliances. The problem is not there. The problem is with the so-called activism, which is sometimes self-destructive. In a sense, you have environmental activists, which is different from people being genuinely concerned about the environment. You have activists, either they're ignorant or they are backed by the wrong forces. So that is our problem, because that they are probably acting at the behest of corrupt competitors to these large corporates, and who have very oblique purpose for this. I think we need to address that. The environment is in greater danger from those kind of forces. I have seen it personally in some of the, I won't name my clients, some clients who have faced huge environmental backlashes from the from the activists, including my daughter when she was very young. She said, we must boycott the products, and ironically, I was advising them on how to come out of the mess. In the sense, they were trying to get extremely compliant, more than, and spending a lot of money on the compliances. But the activists did not want it to happen, because their purpose, the goal was activism, not the environment. That is the point. How are we going to address and get over that? I think that is where our environment is in danger from those, and the parallel lot who don't come under anything, the big criminals. I think a lot more focus is needed. Otherwise, when you're talking about GST and income tax compliances, not only is the collection so high because of compliances, but it's also high because of the high-handed approach of meeting targets which those others who are outside the spectrum, who are not paying, somebody else is paying. The large corporates are paying. That's my question.
So I can sense a certain amount of hopelessness in what you're saying, but I'm always accused of being an optimist. And I'll give you a story. I went to Marina Beach along with my friend who'd come from the US, and I told him, Balki, could you just take a look around? So he looks around and he says, did you see that there was somebody with a parda, there was somebody with a cross, there was, people of different religions, different socio-economic category. There were people of all kinds. There was a millionaire taking a walk on the beach, and there was a beggar on the beach. I said, there's so much diversity here. This is a tinder box, right? Anything could spark off a conflagration and, an angry dialogue or anything like that. I said, I just want you to turn around once more. So I made him take a 360-degree look, and I said, did you notice another peculiar thing? He said, what? I said, did you notice a single policeman? He said, no. I said, law and order has been maintained only because of the collective goodwill of all these people. A huge number of people just want to get on with their lives, just do the right thing. Yes, there will be activists. There will be some people who are motivated by not the right thing. There will be some people who will try to stay outside the law. They're in every society. I think even the most crime-free society does have its bad elements. But it's my hope and my wish. What I see around me, you can walk around here, you can walk around at 9, 10, and nothing happens to you. Largely nothing happens to you. I have been to countries, I'm not the person with the greatest amount of exposure, but you go to Mexico, you go to Nigeria, you go to South Africa, it's positively scary. It is scary. I think we live in a much, much more law-abiding society. People are largely peaceful. And Yes, there are arguments, there are altercations. It's a noisy democracy. And I think to some extent, some of the activists are misguided also. Maybe there are a few people who are getting paid off to do the wrong thing, but a lot of people that are following them are actually people who think that they're doing the right thing. They're all Greta Thunbergs in the, making, stuff like that. They don't realize that what they're doing is not right. So, but I think you have to allow it to go. I mean, I don't think there is a solution to that. So long as you have 95% of people who want to do the right thing and get on with their lives and do the good thing, I think we are in a good spot. That's my, maybe I'm idealistic. So everyone calls me, I have too much of hope. But that's the way I'm built. Too old to change. Huh?
Join the club, I said.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, sir.
Please forgive my voice. I have a sore throat, but I've also worked in the industry, sir. And my question is a little broad, and seeing that the theme is on reconciliation, I think I should ask you this. So basically, you're in the battery industry, but I think that is the downstream end of it. Going ahead, as Madam also mentioned, lithium-ion batteries and maybe other batteries are going to come into the EV space and whatnot. When we get our raw materials, they come from an industry where pollution is a very big aspect, in the sense you can make your factory a green factory, but when the raw material comes from a mine, maybe in Australia or maybe in South America, the pollution there is going to be manifolds. So what role do you think the industry, or you being a downstream player, can make in sort of mitigating that happening right now? Because as you mentioned, saving 3,500 acres of mangroves in India, maybe, but what about the many hectares of land that is, being mined in Australia or somewhere else? So what is your point of view on that, and what do you think you can do as maybe an industry expert in, mitigating that? So that's my question.
So I'm not an industry expert, that's one thing. B is, I don't have that much, experience of the mining industry. I have been in metal industry. I've been in sterlite copper, and I know the harmful effects of mining. And regrettably, any resource extraction has got some negative impacts. There's not too much you can do about the fact that if you want to mine anything out of the earth, you will cause some pollution, you will cause some, and almost every development, any kind of development will cause it. Now, I'm not an expert in how you can actually remediate the situation. That is, some people, after the mining is done, they do a landfill and they do a green cover and stuff like that. They're also supposed to be doing it in a responsible manner, safe manner, make sure that the tailings don't leach into the ground and stuff like that. I don't know the technologies for it. So every large corporation has had its skeletons in its cupboard, whether it is Shell, whether it is Rio Tinto, whether it is BHP, Billiton, anybody. They've all had Codelco. They have seen those days when they got away with blue murder. Also, to be honest, maybe they didn't know about it. They were not as aware of the fact that this was causing a lot. They said, how does it matter? It's somewhere, nobody even lives there. But now people are living there. There are other deleterious impacts. So now they're getting to know about it. What are they actually doing about it? I wouldn't know, because I've not worked in those companies. But today you can see that somebody like Shell puts a lot of money behind renewable energy, been trying to put on a green image and stuff like that. Some of it is PR, no doubt. But it's difficult to sustain PR without doing anything about it. So I think they do a few things. I'll be generous with them, and I think, and I also believe, while they want to make money and stuff like that, they also live in this world. It's not that they came from Mars, pollute Earth, and go and live in Mars. They have got to live here. And their kids have got to live here. So if you're in Australia, you're an Australian miner, where do your kids go? They can't live in the middle of the ocean, right? So I think it will begin to sort of make sense to them too. So the right economic incentives are the thing that I am a great believer in economics. You make the laws easy to follow, hard not to follow, they'll get followed.
Thank you, Ram. I think we had good deliberations on this topic, but I do have one question in the context of what you said. I'm an optimist in terms of what progress industry is making and the country is making. Hopefully not in our lifetime, but at least the next generation will probably benefit a lot from what's going on. But I believe, sometimes I do wonder whether it's a zero-sum game. We're trying to address environment sustainability by creating electric batteries, EVs, and so on and so forth. But to charge those batteries, you need power systems. You need thermal plants. India is largely coal-oriented, coal-fired. So is that going to increase the amount of pollution? How is that going to impact the environment sustainability? Your thoughts on that? I don't want to be branded an activist, but it's a genuine question coming from me. Thanks.
So I take it to a bit of science. I'll just take it to a bit of science, and I'm myself a mechanical engineer. I love IC engines and stuff like that. But the point is, when you convert thermal power to mechanical work, you know this possibly if you've been to any physics class, there is an absolute limitation on it with the Carnot's theorem. It is determined by the upper operating temperature, lower operating temperature, and typically, given the materials that we have, an IC engine can never give you anything more than 33-35%. So for every 100 units of thermal energy that you generate, only about 30-35 can get converted into mechanical work, of which by the time you take it to the wheel, it is 20%. So the world has lived for very long from the time that we started using thermal power and converting into mechanical work. When James Watt saw that steam kettle rising on his wife's this thing, whatever, and that the whole thing started off. Now that is converting thermal energy to mechanical work, and we have lived with that for very long. It is a 30-35% efficiency kind of thing. Electrical is 97-98%, converting electrical energy to mechanical work. So in that sense, it's inevitable that it will move. Transportation will move in that direction. A lot of things will move in that direction. I think that era is gone, where you convert thermal energy into mechanical work. So it's a strong driver for it. Yes, you tell me tailpipe emissions will come down, the stack emissions will go up because you will generate everything. Even if that is so, the fact is that let's say I've got a car which is let's say a 20 horse, let's say a 10 horsepower or something like that. Say 7, 10 kilowatt, whatever kind of thing, as opposed to a thermal power plant which is 220 megawatts. I would imagine the 220 megawatt thing would be more efficient than my car. So I think that the overall emission would be less, even at the stack level. The other thing that's going to happen is that we are going to find more and more efficient ways of actually converting it. So if they move, for example, into hydrogen and stuff like that, so you might get a lot of green energy happening. My knowledge over there cracks up because I'm too old and I don't know how that will happen. But I think that inevitably you will move towards more efficiency, less consumption of resources. You will get more bang for the buck. And science is totally in favor of electric transportation. Although I would not be, it disappoints me heavily, but my career is over.